Welcome, everybody, to the Monthly Movie Dispatch, the show where we get together every month and talk about what we've seen and what we recommend. What separates us from the other 100,000 movie shows is that we're high school friends. We've been talking about movies for like 10 years, and we'd be doing it even if no one was listening. I'm Nick Moffat. I'm here in Marysville, Washington. We've got Derek Deal in Everett, Washington.
Hi.
Sean Bowlby in Seattle, Washington.
Hello.
And Brandon Bowlby all the way in New York City.
Hello.
How's it going, guys?
Hello.
Going good.
Pretty good.
Good.
Hey, well, let's start with some warm-up questions really quick. I've got some warm-up questions that are tentatively based around the movies that we're going to be talking about this episode. So, first one, Stanley Kubrick. Which do you prefer, 2001: Space Odyssey or The Shining?
2001: Space Odyssey.
2001.
The Shining?
That's the only one that Derek's seen.
Not anymore.
Yeah, I've seen two now. I actually have seen 2001: Space Odyssey. I just don't remember it at all.
I feel like you are in the same place with The Shining on that one too, right? Like you.
No, I have rewatched.
I remember that viewing. And,
I have rewatched The Shining.
Okay. Cool.
Where are you at, Nick?
I'm day to day. I probably would go 2001. It's hard because I feel like 2001 is my literal favorite sci-fi movie, and I feel like The Shining is literally my favorite horror movie.
Yeah, so you're all about that Shining.
Yeah, it's really tough. Wes Craven. Question number 2: Scream or Nightmare on Elm Street?
I've never seen Nightmare on Elm Street, so Scream.
Ooh, okay. Derek?
I said Scream.
Oh, you said Scream.
I've not seen either.
Oh,
I have now only seen one Wes Craven.
Scream is so fun, Sean.
You never saw Scream in high school or anything?
I saw Scary Movie. Does that count?
Oh, God.
It like quarter counts.
Yeah.
Okay, and I was stuck on yours, Brandon, because
just go for
foreign
it.
Film. No, so
the two movies.
No, because what do you want me to ask? Girlhood or The Portrait of a Lady on Fire?
Yeah,
I'll just ask you because I think you're the only one. Me too.
Yeah, let's do it.
I guess.
Okay.
I thought you were going to say Girlhood or Boyhood.
Girlhood or Portrait of a Lady on Fire?
Girlhood.
Yeah, I go Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Drama.
How dare you?
Drama.
Controversial.
I don't know. I feel like Brand's choice is more controversial. I feel like, generally speaking, Portrait of a Lady on Fire is a little more acclaimed, but we'll get.
It's definitely more acclaimed.
We'll get there. Anyway, so let's. We've got some movies to talk about today. We're still in the middle of the coronavirus outbreak. Movie theaters are supposed to be opening soon, but all the movies keep getting delayed. So we're still in the middle of this pandemic. So theaters want to open, and like even AMC and Regal have said like, "Hey, we're opening in June." But there haven't been any movies to come out, and Tenet was supposed to come out mid-July, and then it was delayed to July 31st, and now it's coming out mid-August. So at this point, it's like we'll see if it hits there, and we're still like in the middle of this thing where there aren't that many movies coming out. So again, this month we all picked a movie to make each other watch, and I'm loving it. I'm really excited to talk about these movies, but there were a couple movies that came right onto streaming services that we were able to watch from home for 2020, and I watched a few. Brandon, have you seen any 2020 movies?
Saw King of Staten Island, new Judd Apatow film, and The Five Bloods, I believe, are my two big ones.
Totally. I saw The King of Staten Island and The Five Bloods as well. We are not going to talk about The King of Staten Island because it was like, whatever.
Nah.
It was okay. I think we are going to talk about The Five Bloods. So, I don't know, Brandon. I mean, Sean, Derek, have you guys seen any other 2020 movies other than those two?
No, I haven't seen either of those either. So.
Okay, cool. I know I saw a few other ones, but I don't know. I saw The Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and I'm counting that for 2020 because it didn't come to Washington until 2020. So that's going on my 2020 list. But and then I saw another one called Shirley with Elizabeth Moss. That was really good. But I loved The Five Bloods, and I'm really eager to talk to you guys about it. Spike Lee is certainly like a little bit of a controversial filmmaker. I'm just going to read the plot summary from Letterboxd just really quick here. I didn't have it up, so just give me a second, guys. Sorry. Okay. The Five Bloods. Four African-American Vietnam veterans return to Vietnam. They're in search of the remains of their fallen squad leader and the promise of buried treasure. These heroes battle forces of humanity and nature while confronted by the lasting ravages of the immorality of the Vietnam War. So, like I said, I loved this movie, and personally, I think it's the best movie that came out in 2020 so far. It certainly has a lot of Spike Lee mannerisms. He can be very heavy-handed with his messaging. He has some abrasive style choices that might turn some people off. And sometimes I feel like he has like telegraphed plot points. Like sometimes his stories are kind of what you would expect from that story. But to me, all those things almost contradict each other to make something very unique. He's an extremely unique filmmaker, and I feel like he was kind of in a rut for a few years, and now he's got BlacKkKlansman and The Five Bloods back to back, and I feel like he's on a roll. Like he's really hitting his stride right now. This movie is bulging with ideas and themes, and it explores Black Americans in Vietnam, which is something that I haven't seen in movies. It goes through a lot of PTSD type stuff. Delroy Lindau's character is amazing. I feel like he's already gained Oscar buzz. I feel like his character is super interesting because he's a little over the top and like somewhat hard to believe because he's like so out there, but also I could imagine a real life Vietnam vet like being exactly like that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Somehow Spike Lee is like kind of straightforward and very complex. I don't think this is a perfect movie because there's definitely like some problems with it, with like it is a little overstuffed with ideas. It's kind of all over the place in some ways, but for me, most of it worked, or I didn't really care if it didn't work. I'd rather have a filmmaker like Spike Lee be like swinging for home runs and maybe not get the home run, but like do something very interesting in the process. And that's how I felt about The Five Bloods. So I don't know. What did you think, Sean?
So I kind of agree with most of what you said. I thought the concept of this movie and the setup were fucking brilliant. Like that, just the idea of the Vietnam War vets going back to Vietnam today and kind of experiencing like a more modern Vietnam, but where most people are kind of over it, and they're kind of over the war and the tension between the West and their government in that conflict, but that's all still lying under the surface, and it's like almost ready to creep out or pop out at any point. There's a few like brilliant moments in the movie where there's like a big flashpoint between them being veterans with the local people. And actually probably the best scene of the movie was when the merchant guy was trying to sell them a chicken on the boat, and the guy he has kind of a PTSD moment and kind of starts freaking out a little bit. That scene to me was absolutely brilliant. And then there's like, there's all these interesting dynamics between them kind of being accused of, or being blamed for the war, whereas like back at home, there was this whole thing about anti-draft and the black community really fighting against the war because they didn't feel that it was just for them to go fight the white man's war when they didn't have their freedom back at home. And so like that whole dynamic playing out for the whole movie as well.
There's that scene where there was a radio DJ, a Vietnamese radio DJ
Hanoi Hannah
read
or something.
Yeah. And she announced the assassination of Martin Luther King. Mm-hmm. It was like a call to arms for the black soldiers, and everyone got super upset, and rightfully so. But that was a very real thing that was happening in the 60s during the Vietnam War. Muhammad Ali very famously refused to get drafted, and he got arrested for it.
Yeah. So there's like all kinds of stuff, and then I love the idea that one of them, had a kid that he didn't know about, and there was a whole layer of interesting history with that, where she was, I believe, a prostitute for the South, for the pro-Western South, and she had seen this guy when he was a soldier, I assume several times, and they kind of had a relationship. But then when the North came in and took Saigon, she couldn't tell anyone that her daughter was from a GI. And she had to hide all that, and so like there's a lot. I could go on with all the interesting ideas and interesting things that were set up in the movie. But for me, I do think very little of it actually paid off for me. In the end, like none of the dynamics between the characters paid off. Nothing really happened with that character, with the daughter, that didn't pay off in an interesting way. I don't think the father-son stuff really paid off for me, and I really didn't like the kind of 4-act structure that the movie went for, where they go through this whole thing and you think they're coming out the other side. And then they like kind of restart this whole 4th act, where then they split up, and one of the groups
action movie stuff
and action movie finale stuff. I think I don't really think anything really paid off in that 4th act that in really any kind of meaningful way for me, and especially not enough to justify adding another 45 minutes or half hour, 45 minutes to the movie.
That last part had that scene with Delroy Lindo's character walking through the woods, like talking to himself. And
that was
I thought
cool.
That was one of the best. I thought that was like maybe his best scene in the movie, and he was maybe the best part of this whole movie.
Yeah, he definitely was. I agree with that, but I don't see why that had to be in a 4th act, I guess, is another thing. Like that scene was really cool, but I don't really feel like his character arced in a complete or particularly interesting way. And I think Brandon's even going to get into that a little bit more too, but because we actually talked about it yesterday or something. But yeah, overall, I did like the movie. It had a lot of really interesting ideas. I actually, gave it a fairly positive review, just for this, kind of the same reason you said, Nick. he definitely swung for the fences. It didn't quite make it there. Maybe he got a ground rule double or something, but they had to settle for a field goal, or
insert various sports analogy. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really going to sit here and argue with you guys. I mean, I'm sure Brandon's going to say, I see what he wrote in the show notes here. He just wrote one word twice, and I'll let you repeat that word. But I mean, I don't know. Spike Lee is this guy who I feel like he doesn't adhere to filmmaking rules, and I feel like you guys are a little more like strict on those types of things. I feel like Delroy Lindo's character had basically no arc, but that's fine because I don't know, because his performance was so strong and the movie was trying to say something about his character that didn't require an arc. But I'll pass it over to Brandon.
Yeah, and I also don't want to like go too spoiler at the ending, but I think everything Sean said, like I fully agree with. Like I was pretty into the movie and really liked the setup, and it kind of slowly rolled into messier and messier territory as it got more in the action genre, and some deaths happened, and these kind of like branching character interactions didn't really like pay off in interesting ways for me. I don't want to go too much in detail of it, but I think one different thing that caught my attention that seemed really related to King of Staten Island that I noticed, and maybe this is kind of a Netflix thing, though I don't know if they produced this or if they just bought it later on. But
pretty sure they just bought it later on, honestly,
okay,
because
so maybe it's unrelated.
Was supposed to go into theaters, but I could be wrong.
I just, in both these Netflix films I watched back to back, I really noticed like super, super lingering scenes that just like seemed self-masturbatory. I guess it's like, you need to cut, like this scene should end right here. Why are people still repeating themselves and talking? Like, and it wasn't just once, it was like, once every 15 minutes. I was just like, who is editing this film? And it felt very much in both movies. So I thought maybe it was like a Netflix letting people have two directors like go on for too long, but maybe that's not the reason.
Well, The King of Staten Island wasn't Netflix. That was not a Netflix movie.
Oh.
Yeah.
No. Oh shit! You're right.
That was just a
premium. My whole theory
was just a
crushed.
Premium at-home viewing.
Anyways, but similarities. Yeah, it's just like I remember one thing when they were like found the God, so many spoilers. When they found
the treasure,
the treasure in the ground midway through the movie, like their celebration went on for like 6 minutes, and I couldn't believe. It's hard to like describe it when you're like don't have the scene playing in front of you, but like I couldn't believe they couldn't just show them excited for like 45 seconds and move on. But a ton of little things like that really got to me as well.
Yeah, see, like these types of things like don't bother me at all. I feel like we just watch movies differently because, I like lingering stuff like that. I thought that was kind of cool because you got to see them like celebrating, and they did their thing where they pull their hands in the middle and they like were reunited and connected. And, I like that kind of stuff. And I don't know, maybe I just don't really care about that. But
I guess in it, yeah, the hand thing, and I'm just being so negative, but by the like 5th time they did it, it turned into like cringe territory for like sentimental kind of cringy for me, especially the like 4th and 5th time they spent time showing that fist bump. I'm glad you liked it, Nick. I think there was like so much great setup here that he's always a fascinating director, and it's cool he's like reaching so high and so hard with his films now.
Well, they're getting generally positive reviews too, which is cool.
Yeah, I think I'm in the minority on this.
I would actually definitely shout out the rest of that cast too. Like, it was, first of all, it was really awesome to see our buddies from The Wire back together. That was really cool. Yeah, that's always fun. And he did that same actor did that same thing in Black Klansman as well. So I think,
so you're talking about Clark Peters, who plays. He's one of the cops on The Wire.
He's Lester. And then there's, is that his name in The Wire?
Yeah, Lester. And then there's I think Jonathan Majors. No, I'm sorry. Jonathan Majors was in The Last Black Man in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was cool seeing him.
Another great movie.
Roles.
And then
Isaiah Whitlock Jr.
Yeah, he did his signature.
Is that from The Wire? Is that where he first did that? So I saw it in.
I think so.
I saw it in Black Klansman and this movie. So I wonder if. I mean, I guess Spike Lee is just a Wire fan, a big fan of The Wire.
I think I've seen him do that in other movies other than Spike Lee movies too. I think that kind of is just
him.
His
it's
thing
a him thing
for. Paul Walter Hauser also was in a really small role, which was kind of funny. And Jean Reno showed up too, which was also surprising. It's like, oh, what's he doing here? And Chadwick Boseman was also in it. So, great cast.
All four of those, main cast members just had fantastic chemistry together, and I just loved hanging out with them early on in the movie. It was pretty cool to see them.
But yeah, I mean, I think you guys are right that it is getting generally positive reviews. It's at 3.7 on Letterboxd, which is out of 5, and that's pretty high. That's pretty good. It's not like top 50 of the year good for Letterboxd, but then like I see the people that I'm following, and I feel like most of the people I follow gave it 4 stars, but there's a couple of people that gave it like 1 or 2, and then a bunch of my friends gave it 4.5, and I gave it 4.5. But like I said, most of these things worked for me, or the things that didn't work, I was just kind of like, the movie's too strong in other ways for me to,
I want to say actually what I thought was the most strongest thing to me about like the filming style was not just the different aspect ratios, but the way they switched between them, like really looked super polished, and the editing between the still photographs at really key points actually was pretty surprisingly great. Like that looked so good. Yeah. And I loved those parts about it too.
He's done that in a bunch of his movies. Just cutting away to like historical photos, or when he cut away to the soldier that won the Medal of Honor, he does that kind of stuff all the time.
I mean, it's pretty cool that Spike Lee is kind of like championing Black history in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is kind of an ongoing conversation that's happening in our culture about how a lot of Black history isn't totally taught. And I feel like Spike Lee makes a point to put history into his movies, mm-hmm. history that you might not have heard growing up. So, that's The Five Bloods. It's available on Netflix right now. I highly recommend it. And I actually really think that even though Sean and Brandon didn't have the best things to say, I mean, I feel like everyone should check it out. It's everyone has Netflix. It's available for you to watch, and it certainly is the most interesting movie that's come out this year. It's daring, at least. So let's move on to the movies that we've forced each other to watch for the month of June. Up first is going to be Sean's movie choice. Sean, do you want to set us up?
Yeah, I picked the Stanley Kubrick movie The Killing for you guys to watch. I'll give you the quick IMDb summary. Crook Johnny Clay assembles a 5-man team to plan and execute a daring track race robbery. It's written and directed by Stanley Kubrick, starring Sterling Hayden, Colleen Gray, and Vince Edwards. Or no, there's who is that one guy that I recognize? It doesn't matter.
Sterling Hayden. I mean, he's kind of the main
Sterling
character, and he's been in a bunch of movies.
Who's the? Never mind. The guy who was married to the femme fatale.
Oh yeah,
he seemed familiar. Anyways, sorry, I'm not finding him immediately. I'll move on. So, I picked this movie because I think not only did I know most of you hadn't seen it, but I think it's not only do I really enjoy the movie, I think it's a ton of fun. It has a great look, has a great style, and it's just really fun and intense. But I think it also is a really interesting movie in film history as well as Stanley Kubrick's career, because it's first of all, it's one of the first heist films to really bring together all the tropes of the heist genre. There's like one movie called Rafifi that is came out a year before it that kind of is more talked about, but this movie and Rafifi really brought those tropes together. With like creating bringing together a team of specialized people, each one with their own particular role to play in the heist. And then going over the plan in a dark room, and talking, like laying out in detail all the things that they have to overcome in order to pull off the heist. And then the long, elaborate heist being carried out in a very detailed and precise manner, with things slowly starting to fall apart as the movie goes which builds the tension of the film. All of that was kind of pioneered by this film and Rafifi. It also is a really important movie in Stanley Kubrick's career because while this movie wasn't a huge success, Kirk Douglas actually watched this movie and loved it and kind of loved what Stanley Kubrick did with it, enough to bring Stanley Kubrick onto his project Paths of Glory, which then, after he worked with Stanley Kubrick on Paths of Glory, Kirk Douglas brought Stanley Kubrick then onto Spartacus a few days into production. So this was kind of the movie that really launched Stanley Kubrick's career in a lot of ways. It's also a hugely influential film, and a lot of directors have cited this movie as a huge influence on them. Notably, Reservoir Dogs was heavily influenced. Quentin Tarantino has said this movie heavily influenced Reservoir Dogs, with it being a heist, but also showing everything out of order, non-chronologically. As well as for Christopher Nolan, the way that Christopher Nolan plays with time, this movie was a huge influence on him.
I just want to say real quick that this was my first time seeing that Tarantino totally rips off people. It was not that he was a little more than influenced. It was there were plot points that he had straight up taken from this movie in a good way. I don't think it's bad. I think it's totally fine that he does that.
That's what he does. I mean, that's pretty much
what I'm talking about, right?
But yeah, also I think, and then the Joker, the mask that the Joker wears at the beginning of The Dark Knight is based on the mask that
You're right.
Sterling Hayden wears in this movie. This movie played a big role. This movie was heavily influenced by Rashomon. Stanley Kubrick had seen Rashomon and was blown away by how Rashomon plays with time and how it shows the same scene several times over and over from the perspective of different characters. I think there's a lot of really interesting history and stuff going on in this movie. I also think it's the first time Stanley Kubrick was really matured into starting to mature into becoming a great filmmaker. I love the way he shoots these long, complex dialogue scenes with lots of different characters, bouncing dialogue back and forth, and the way he covers a lot of his scenes in this movie in big, wide masters. That worked really well for him for the rest of his career. You really get to see some of that starting in this movie, and then also I think like just as a writer, he's really started to mature in like taking those risks of telling a story out of order, out of chronological order, playing with time, playing with perspective, and like really being able to innovate a genre. But yeah, I mean, the movie also, like, I just think the movie's so intense. And the way it builds up to its ending is just like, your heart's racing. I don't know if we're going to get into spoilers, but
spoilers for
I mean, like
70-year-old movie.
It's so, yeah. I mean, so like another interesting thing about this movie is the fact that you couldn't really make a movie at this time where the bad guys or the criminals get away with it. And knowing that they had to play within those rules, I don't see this movie ending any other way. Like, it really pulled that off. The way the movie ended, and I think it worked really well. Great cast.
I think one of my favorite shots was the like two doors opening. It kind of looked like slow motion because they did it so like smoothly and kind of slowly, in sync with each other as they're coming out of the airport. It was like such a great,
like,
I think, second to last shot of the movie.
Yeah,
it was really cool.
The cops.
Yeah.
I love the ending so much. Oh my gosh, gets me so excited every single. I've seen this movie a few times now, and like each time it's like just it feels like the plan was executed so perfectly. Like almost everything goes right for most of the movie, and then like
the Deus Ex
happens.
Dog.
Yeah, well,
Deus Ex Chihuahua.
That, like human emotion happens that kind of screws over a bunch of the guys, and then like Sterling Hayden like gets so close to getting away, and then just a random dog ruins everything in such a glorious fashion.
But first, the bag is too big for him to carry onto the plane, and then.
Right.
Yeah. And it's just when it happens, it's just so heartbreaking. And you're just like, you die inside a little bit.
Yeah, I like how far it just kind of kept going and going to just this final little climax at the airport. It was really good.
It definitely looks like
he tries getting away, and it's just like
he looks physically wounded, like on his way out of the airport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One very 50s is like, what the hell was up with that guy's girlfriend? I forget what his name is, but in her opening like scene with him, it was so painful to watch.
Johnny Clay's girlfriend?
Yeah. When she's just like, I'll do anything for you. Like, just tell me what you need.
So, I mean, that's another interesting thing kind of with the femme fatale characters.
Complete opposite. And
exactly. And
the scenes were back to back too.
Yeah, because like in one of them, so in that one with the main character, you have this stern, powerful, in control man with a wife who's just very supportive, very kind, beautiful, and will just do anything for him, kind of the way that it's supposed to be in the 50s. And then you have the femme fatale character she's the one who is in control, and she's the one who is looking to better herself and take more control over her life, and her husband is this weak will do anything for her, even sacrifice the outcome of the heist, just
right.
to,
but
and so like that,
he's
that
a real
dynamic
person.
What's that?
And but he's a real like person. She is like hardly. She's like a caricature, I guess. I don't know. She's like almost nothing. She just has a couple like lines that don't even sound like a human would speak. And he's more flat. Yeah, he's pathetic.
He like
but
almost pretty much says the exact same thing she does. Like, I would do anything. I'd do anything. I think he says that. I would do.
I guess one of the
anything to make you
differences.
happy.
She doesn't really have a role in the movie though either. She's kind of just like
she could have just not been there to say those lines, and it would all been the exact same.
Mm-hmm.
When actually she came back in at the end, I like kind of forgot who she was when she was just by his side at the airport. But anyways, I think one of the most interesting aspects of this is like I don't get to watch very many 50s films, and it's awesome seeing one like this from such a like prolific director, and just how like clean and kind of flawlessly executed what watching it now is such a typical heist movie is. Just all that was like really fascinating to watch and just get that history lesson or history dump on.
Mm-hmm.
I bought the Criterion Collection Blu-ray for this, and on the Blu-ray there's Stanley Kubrick's movie they made before The Killing, Killer's Kiss, and that's another film noir. But that one is pretty much just like by the books. Like, it just, to me, it's basically like another film noir. Like, so many film noirs came out at the time, and that was just like another one. And I don't really feel like you guys need to watch it. I don't really recommend it, but it was interesting to see for like, completism to see Stanley Kubrick's like progression and stuff. But to me, it also was interesting seeing how Killer's Kiss was like pretty ordinary, and then The Killing was like pretty meticulously perfect in a lot of ways, like just how the pace and the different timelines and the different people and the depth of a lot of the side characters too. I wanted to point out a couple scenes that I thought were like specifically like deeper than I thought that they would be. Like the scene with the sniper who got into that track early, and he kind of befriended the security guard who was a black man, and he kind of like related to him on a level, and they kind of hit it off as a friendship. But then if the guy was kind of getting too close to him, and he kind of had business to take care of with shooting the horse, and then he kind of just was casually racist like everyone else during that time, and kind of ruined the whole thing for himself. Which I'm just saying, there was like so much. I just don't usually see that in movies, especially around that time.
To cap it off, like the horseshoe was kind of his downfall.
Yeah,
right.
The gift that he was being given for being so nice to the lot attendant, was the horseshoe, and that's what blew his tire and caused him not to be able to get away from the cops.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of a cool trick of writing.
A scene about just having the planting that character, which we've seen in so many heist movies, like the marksman character, and yet that scene just has so much going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was interesting because I mean, we've talked about, I have like no reference point for Kubrick besides The Shining and stuff, but it's always, one of my favorite things that I've discovered in, really, I guess it started when we were going to like Bellevue College and stuff, but I feel like I missed out a lot on watching older movies as a kid, and I think it's a hard thing to get into for youth. It's just like when you have all these spectacle movies that are out there, it's just harder to get into the old movies. But what I love when you watch like a true master, like I can think of like watching Citizen Kane or like Metropolis and stuff, like these movies that are the foundations of the films that we watch today, like, really hold up so well. Like, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, like, with this movie, without being recommended, it would have been a hard movie for me to just jump in and watch. But like every great movie, it is so good it just grabs you. It doesn't really matter what time period it's from. Like a really good movie is able to, it just pulls you in no matter what. It's just this.
You just forget instantly that it's a 50s film.
Yeah. And it's still filled with like cool visual stuff too. Like, so the scene that really just like, you know, I'm kind of just watching it the first like 10 minutes of the movie, but then there's the scene happened that all of a sudden I was just like pulled in. I was like, yes, this is so freaking cool, which was just the introduction of Johnny Clay, where he's walking through his apartment. It's that like tracking shot.
Totally.
And he goes through like 5 rooms and there's like all this shit passing in front of the camera, and like he's just walking and talking. It's like, what is happening? Like, there's just so much happening visually in such a simple way. And it's just cool to know that 70 years ago, that's the kind of cool stuff they were inventing at the time, pretty much, you know. And
I feel like Kubrick did a lot of similar stuff like that with the scenes like at the horse track, like just like with the lockers, in the locker room, with just all the activity that was going on there, and then like at the bar, all the people going in and out, and with the like the people that were doing the money, like just all the movement that was happening in the movie was so like chaotic but also controlled.
Yeah. I think that was natural. My favorite scene, the one in the locker room, because like there's so much going on and there's so many moving pieces, and you feel like you're constantly jumping around. But then like when Johnny Clay goes into the locker room, it just like it slows down for I don't remember how long that scene is, but it's like maybe a 2-3 minute scene of him just opening up the locker, pulling out the flowers
so efficiently.
It's just so efficient. He knows exactly what he's doing, grabs the bag, puts on the mask, loads the gun, gets the gun ready, and then like and then it goes, and it's just like it's just like this perfect moment that was also set up really well earlier on in the movie when the guy comes in with the like that. All those pieces were really well laid out, like with him getting the flowers and like dropping them off, and the guy going to the locker room, putting it in the locker, and it's just like it's just so masterfully done, and that moment just gives it so much room to breathe before it like goes in and you know, it's I guess kind of the climax of the heist.
Totally.
Yeah.
I do think we need to move on to the next movie. But yeah, dude, great pick.
Thank you. Glad you guys liked it.
Thumbs up all around. Yeah, guys?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, okay, we're moving on to Derek's movie choice. Derek.
Yes. Let me pull up the synopsis. So I chose the 1991 Wes Craven movie, The People Under the Stairs. IMDb plot synopsis is 2 adults and a juvenile break into a house occupied by a brother and sister and their stolen children. There, they must fight for their lives. I chose this because I'm just a really big Wes Craven fan. I really, really just enjoy his whole filmography, and I think he's an important voice in the horror genre. And I thought this movie is just so weird, and I don't think a lot of people have seen it. And yeah, it's just a load of fun. It's so ridiculous and over the top. I'd hate for people to miss watching it because it's just so ridiculous and awesome. I watched it years ago during when Wes Craven died. We were doing our horror movie month, and so I just did a whole week of Wes Craven movies, and I picked like some I'd heard were really good, and then just some I'd never heard of before, just to kind of get a good taste of it. And this movie just always stood out because first of all, it stars Ned and Nadine from Twin Peaks.
I just realized that. I was just clicking through the pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, man.
So, like, when I saw that immediately, I was just like, oh, I gotta watch it. And it's Wes Craven.
Was this pre-Twin Peaks, too?
This
is
is
the 80s, right?
During
91.
91.
So it was
Same
like during
year?
Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So yeah, like Nadine really like, you know, went downhill after she got out of that coma or whatever happened in season 2.
Yeah. And then it just has some weird freaking imagery in it that I just love. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of, like, it doesn't feel like a story that's been done before. And it's just, I don't know. Like, it's just so weird. So the premise is, like a kid, they're breaking in to try to find money, but like what really drives, like, implants this movie in my memory is those two villains, and like just the imagery of I don't know the guy, Everett McGill running around with a shotgun in a gimp suit. Like,
Gimp
Oh
suit.
my gosh. So crazy.
I don't know why it's happening, but it's just such an interesting like thing to be happening while he's hunting down like this child and trying to murder him and stuff. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to, it's not like a incredible movie. I don't think it's not like Wes Craven isn't known for his like style visually, or like his I don't know, he's known for just making movies that are, I think it's more like the concept and the content of his movies that make them as important as they are, as opposed to his actual film style or look or know cinematography and stuff.
I kind of feel like with Wes Craven, he knows movie tropes, like horror movie tropes, better than anyone. Like, I mean, you've seen that with Scream and New Nightmare, that like he knows how to dissect like what is supposed to happen in horror movies. And I feel like he does that really well in this movie. Like, he has all these things that happen as they're supposed to happen with horror movies. But I feel like he excels at like set design. Like, I think that's where like a lot of his really cool stuff comes from, is like set design and like character costumes and stuff too. Like what you're saying about the gimp suit, but like the house in this movie is like amazing. Like, it's so complicated and it's like a maze and there's all these hidden tunnels. But you know, even going back to like A Nightmare on Elm Street, like that movie is, I feel like that one is so visual, and like, yeah, maybe not like the best cinematography ever, but like the sets in The Nightmare on Elm Street are like, you know, twisted. But
yeah, the house is a character in this film, and it's one of the coolest parts about it. Like Derek, you were talking about his ideas, like the like kid in the walls that's just like running around terrorizing the father of the house is so brilliant. And the scenes of him like shooting the like ceiling and trying to find him in the walls as he's like, I don't know, making all that noise and crawling around back there. It's just really inventive and like awesome imagination.
Such a
pretty
weird,
hilarious
like, backstory.
Right? Yeah. And they're like, he's too scared to go in there after him.
But like,
and
he's
that's
been
just
there
the
for
rule
like
they
years.
set.
He's just been running around.
It's just this insane, fictitious world that like he's created of this house.
Yeah.
like, I really, there was that scene where the girl that's in the house is like, oh yeah, Daddy, or I can't remember what the character's name is, but Everett McGill's character is just like, yeah, he doesn't like him because
Daddy.
he tried getting away and now he just lives in the walls. And it's like, yeah, they just have accepted that this guy lives in the walls, and then they have all these other scarier people that live like under the stairs and stuff. But yeah, I mean, was I wrong thinking that like a lot of this movie was like pretty hilarious?
No,
like,
it definitely was.
It's funny. Yeah.
I definitely was thinking about the Goonies the whole time I was watching this movie. There's like
I can see
a
that
ton
for
of
sure.
similarities. There's like So, you know, they're going after like this hidden treasure, and there's like, you know, this family of weirdos that's after them, trying to kill them. And, you know, it centers around kids and this weird adventure. It's like this totally bizarre, you know, almost fun house type house that they have to, like, this fun house that is just beneath the normal world that they live in every day, as well as like even these deformed, the deformed people under the stairs kind of being almost like Sloth, where at first they're like really scary monsters, and then it kind of turns out that they become an ally to the protagonists. And so like,
but that's mixed with like completely Evil Dead for moments. Yeah. So this like children's film on top of like not a children's film whatsoever.
It's like an adult horror film for kids. It's like, you know, not holding back any punches. It's an adult horror film, but it's almost written and made as if it were the Goonies for kids. And it's such a bizarre like mix of tones and subject matter and like you know, gore and silliness that it's just like he, you know, he's in his gimp suit, which is, you know, it's a pretty adult concept, the idea of a gimp suit, but he's just like so goofy that it's almost like he's performing for kids, like it's a kids movie or something.
Yeah, there's even that one scene when she's like strung up. And yeah, you're kind of questioning it the whole time. Like, she's sexually abused as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But then there's like that one scene when he's in the gimp suit and he like actually grabs his crotch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just right like, before. It's super disturbing because I didn't know the movie would like also go in that direction too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. For sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. I have his yell stuck in my head. Like, Ed Hurley, just like yelling in the gimp suit, like that, like low that he does.
Yeah,
it's like stuck in my head, and like I think it's hilarious. But yeah, I mean, you're totally. I mean, there's definitely parts of this movie that are really twisted.
It has some like scenes that I forgot how like chilling they are. Like one, and like to the little girl's credit, like she did really good in this movie too. But there's a scene where I just call her Nadine. I don't know her name, but she's like forcing her into the boiling hot like bathtub, and she's like,
she's just screaming.
Yeah,
like she's getting like first degree burns in her entire body.
Like, Jesus Christ, it's really heavy.
There was like some social commentary that I thought was kind of cool that Wes Craven was trying to sprinkle in there. I don't think all of it like landed super strongly, but I did think it was kind of cool how I don't know, urban this movie was. And
just the fact that it's starring a young little black kid, that was, you know, it was pretty cool.
Well, and the whole reason they're breaking into their house was because they were like,
they're the landlords too.
Yeah, they were like real estate mongrels who were like pushing all these people out of the neighborhood. And you know, they were it was rumored that they had like, they're sitting on all this treasure, and they had like weird people, so they're, you know, the community was kind of trying to get back at them. I mean, the ending was pretty funny in that way, with like all the money like flying out of the house, and everyone just celebrating because money was coming down from the sky, you know.
They saved their neighborhood. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Like the premise of the movie was, like the Goonies, them going to find this treasure to try and save their family, save their home, save the community, their neighborhood.
Yeah,
it's another real estate based adventure movie.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, do you guys have anything more to add? I mean, it was great.
I mean,
I also love Wes Craven.
Yeah. I hope Sean, you get a chance to watch some of this other stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
I I also recommend if you watch Movies with Mikey, has a Wes Craven like episode that he did, and it like shines on all the things I love so much about Wes Craven. It's definitely worth it will inspire you to go watch his movies. But yeah, he's one of my all time favorites. So
nice.
Glad you guys got
I definitely need to see more of his movies for sure.
Yeah.
I just did my Wes Craven ranking. I just put that out on Letterboxd, and I have Scream at number 1, and New Nightmare and The Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and 3. But yeah, for me, The People Under Stairs is like right there with Hills of Eyes and like Scream 2. I think all three of those are like not as good as the top 3, but they're like they could be interchangeable of how good they are.
Right.
And then like Last House on the Left, I watched last year for Horror Movie Month, and it was very upsetting.
Yeah.
But I think he's also got a few like straight up like bad movies that I haven't seen. And I know I saw Cursed in high school. It was like a werewolf movie, and that one was pretty bad. But I think for the most part, Wes Craven's he's a legend for a reason. Like he broke a lot of ground with horror movies.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen any of his TV stuff? I'm just looking at his IMDb. He did Nightmare Cafe and The People Next Door are a couple TV series that he was the creator of, creator.
I haven't seen either of those.
I have not. I didn't know he did TV.
Yeah, I didn't even know that.
But I do think we need to move on to the next movie.
Yeah.
But so, Derek, thanks for making these guys watch a underappreciated Wes Craven movie. The fact that I think you said that at the beginning that a lot of people haven't seen this movie. I think you're right about that. It's not like one of his most well-known movies, but I'm glad they made these guys watch it.
Yeah.
Brandon, you're next.
Yeah, so my pick is a film, 2014 French film called Girlhood. The IMDb synopsis is: a girl with few real prospects joins a gang, reinventing herself and gaining a sense of self-confidence in the process. However, she soon finds out that this new life is not necessarily making her any happier. So this is the first film I saw by the French director Selena Sciamma, and she had this really kind of prominent film that came out last year, Portrait Lady on Fire. I know a couple of you have seen, and this film really blew me away when it came out. I think it made my top 10 list. I loved it, and it was really cool going back and revisiting it because I really freaking enjoyed it again this time as well. I think one of the things that stands out the most on the rewatch that I kind of forgot about was the passage of time through the movie and the way they kind of edit that together, along with that really beautiful synth score. That kind of reminded me of the Samauri a little bit as well, Nick. But every time the movie hard fades to black on an interesting cut and then comes back in maybe a month or two into the future, and you're kind of picking up more pieces of where she is in her late teen life and the choices she's made. I think that's just one of the coolest or more unique aspects of this film that really kind of keep the momentum going of you being on the journey with her. The movie is freaking crisp and beautiful looking. It's just really clean and cinematic, and has just really good color and shots of the streets and not suburban but outer city Paris, which just looks really cool right up until the final climax. There's just so much awesome skill involved, and the way they stitch together her just typing in the numbers to get into the apartment, and then the holding on the door handle to her kind of walking away and just showing the out of focus city as she kind of walks by it. There's just so much really great craft, and also depth in what she's going through, along with what they're showing on screen, and that's kind of throughout the film as well. the gang of girls and what she goes through is just like really cool to kind of like try to wrap your head around at every minute. The movie doesn't hold your hand at all. It just keeps moving forward, doesn't tell you exactly how the lead girl is feeling at all, and doesn't really tell you everything about the situation she's in. And every scene you're kind of like trying to figure out what is going on in her life, how she like feels about it, and how it's like actually affecting her, good and bad. You know, like the gang, you see it's bringing her some happiness and like bringing her out of her shell, but also they're kind of doing some shitty things, like not the worst stuff in the world. Like, they're drinking rum and coke in a hotel and shoplifting a few articles of clothes, but it's also, you know, making her a more confident person. And just these like, you know, weird positives and negatives and dynamics. And then she finds her sister doing the same thing. And it's just like an interesting, like to think about while you're watching her go through the situations, because the movie doesn't tell you how to think about it. And so it kind of keeps your mind going throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, I loved her girl gang. Like, I thought that was probably my favorite part of the movie. I felt like her girl gang was like a real family, and like where so many other things were failing her in her life. I mean, her family wasn't that supportive of her. Like, her mom was kind of absent. Her brother was abusive, and she took care of her sister, but like she didn't really have too much support herself. And I think she first met the girls after that conversation with her teacher, and her teacher like was failing her too. It was like all these things were failing her, and then she came outside and she met these people and they defended her, and it was like for the first time ever she had like people that were hers.
There's some great moments with the group that I realized this time through, like the putt-putt golf scene, like made me really crack up pretty hard. And the girl is just like so argumentative, and then she ends up like crying at the end because she gets a hole in one. Just like there's a few other like moments that
one of my really favorite moments with the girls, if I could tell you, was when the lead girl was like absent for some reason, and then the main character got into that fight, and then she was like, then the lead girl of the gang like came back to her, and she was like, I did this for you. I fought this girl for you. And she was like all angry, and it was like, don't tell me you did it for me because you did it for you. And in most movies, it would have been like the conflict that broke up the gang or something. But instead, like, she gave her a big hug. And I know like maybe we shouldn't be celebrating fighting between youths, but you know, it was like, I thought it was a very sweet moment of like, no, they're still supporting each other even now.
Yeah, I think that scene really showed like the power of friendship, especially at that age when you feel so isolated from your parents, from teacher, from you know, you're kind of starting to have to think about your place in society, whereas like, you know, your friend group just kind of accepts you and is supportive. I think that scene was definitely one of my favorites. I also really enjoyed the scene where they're just in the hotel getting drunk, and then it's just like a 3 or 4 minute scene where they're just
dance off.
Yeah, dancing and
it was great.
Singing along to the song, and you know, everyone
cuts really
with their friends, and
it cuts like really well into that song moment, and like it gets super blue and like dark. Yeah. And it's like a really great scene.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, that was really great. I felt like this movie was a lot about girls. I mean, it's called Girlhood, and I mean, I feel like the name is kind of weird just because like Boyhood came around the same time, and I don't know. And I didn't really feel like it was like growing up the same way that Boyhood was, but I mean, that's just me like projecting my own like connections in my brain. But I really,
it doesn't translate the same in French too.
It's
like,
I feel like French. I was just looking at it. It's
Bande de Felice.
So Band of Phillies.
Well, it has a different name. Band
of Girls. I think Phillies is girls. Band of Girls.
Yeah. Like, it had a different name. I feel like they marketed it as Girlhood in the United States because Boyhood, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah.
But I still felt like a lot of this movie though was like the boys in her life, the men in her life, like kind of controlled what was happening. There are so many instances in the movie of like girls doing their thing, but then the boys showed up and they had to stop doing their thing. And it was, the movie was like about her taking that power for herself and kind of making something of her own femininity and going forward into the world. And it was a very beautiful notion in that way.
Yeah, like her brother beating the shit out of her for, being a slut, having sex with, I guess, one of his friends. But then also like the one moment of bonding they had is when she beat the shit out of another girl. Like he's proud of her for that, but will actually beat the shit out of her for, having sex with a guy at that age. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things with that, Nick. Like one that was really kind of hard to think about was towards the end when they're at the party and this they're not at the party, she's with the new gang and this girl walks by and the guy grabs her arm, tells her she's like beautiful and she's obviously scared. But our lead character like doesn't stand up for her and she says like, you need to thank him. Yeah, say thank you. And she's like, at that moment was a part of the problem.
Yeah, I think I think that goes along with like her conversation with her roommate that I think happened earlier or right around there, where she says like, you're one of his girls, even if you don't think you are, So like the whole time is she kind of took this job thinking that she would work for this guy, but she's not going to be like all these other girls who...
She's not going to be a prostitute.
She's not going to be a prostitute. She's not going to be his girl.
Yeah.
And then like that's the scene at the party that where her roommate comes over, and it's after her and her boyfriend have like that fight, and the boyfriend storms out. And then her roommate comes over and like takes her hand and leads her over to the dance floor. And it's like this really beautiful like moment where, you think the movie's going to go in this other direction where they're building this relationship with her roommate, and maybe that's going to turn into some kind of romantic relationship. And it's just like this long, beautiful scene of them slow dancing. And then that guy comes in and it just like so quickly flips that scene on its head. And it's just immediate heartbreak and like, alarm bells going off, and you want her to get the fuck out of there. And that was a brilliant scene.
It was so tender and then so horrific. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I had a question for you guys. So the movie, I thought the opening of this movie was really great. So it opens with, surprisingly, an American football match, which I assume was like a practice scrimmage at their school, not like a real game. But it starts out with an American football match, and then they're all like cheering together and like hugging each other at the end of the match. But then all the girls leave this practice, and they're in a big group walking away from the school or wherever they were playing. And as they're walking, they kind of start getting harassed by some men, like a group of men. I assume like the same men who were towards the end of the movie that she was working with. But so they start walking away, and then as they're walking, the group of girls slowly break apart into smaller groups. So like the first time, half the group leaves and goes off in a different direction, and then another half of the group leaves and goes off in another direction, and then another one or two goes off in another direction, until like slowly but surely, by the time the protagonist gets home, which at that point you actually don't know who the main character is, because you've just seen this group of girls, to the point where she gets to her house and there's two girls, and one of them, they say, all right, see you later, and one of them goes off, and you're left with the protagonist all alone. I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts on how that ties into the rest of the movie, and also if you had any insight into like why they chose it to be an American football match, whereas like the rest of the movie she's like playing soccer on her Xbox, and I think there's a few soccer games that she watches.
The soccer
kind of
thing's
just
interesting.
Saw it as like a retroactively like just being another instance of her trying to fit in with people, and that scene like just shows everyone kind of get peeled away until she's left in her kind of run down area of the town.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it just kind of furthered that feeling of isolation that she has from everybody else until she gets the group, you know.
And like showing the dominance of like the men in her, neighborhood that they kind of, rule outside, and they all had to shut up and be quiet and try not to get harassed by them as they were walking through to get to their home finally. And
that's what I was thinking too, Brandon. Like that's what I remember most about that scene was how much fun they were having until they walked up to the boys and then they were silent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as far as, American football, I don't know. Like it could easily have been soccer, but I guess, I don't know, maybe she just wanted to show, a tougher sport, I guess. I don't know. Not sure.
Yeah, it could be.
Man,
Or
that freaking...
Is there something about America?
I don't know.
I think it was... Yeah, I don't know. I definitely feel it's like just another example of her doing things that aren't necessarily for her, but she's trying to fit in with someone.
Totally.
She's not into football necessarily. We see she likes soccer, but yeah, she's playing football to be with these people.
Yeah,
I like that, Derek. I like that.
Maybe there's some kind of culture around American football, like in Paris or outside of Paris, that we don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But also, like the only other reference to America was there was a girl with a very prominent American flag shirt, and
I didn't notice that.
she was like just kind of randomly one of the dancer. There was like 3 dancers at one point. I kind of forget the context of the scene, but
That dance off in Paris, before she finds her sister.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that has any significance, but the connection between the two. You never really see a French flag or anything, so.
Yeah, Brandon, you mentioned the music in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I've like added the soundtrack to my Spotify homepage.
The one song.
Well, there's that song, but even just the score for the rest of the movie is like, it's just such a cool sound. I loved it. That first song definitely like before even anything's on screen, that song starts playing. It's like doing the studios and stuff, telling the studios. It was like already starting to like really get into it.
And it ends.
So cool.
It ends on that synth as well.
Yeah,
building up. And she's making her final decision.
Yeah.
I don't know. Any quick thoughts on her final decision? Like, she didn't go to her family, but she also
honestly,
had a stern look on her face.
I thought about this for a while, and I mean, I still don't have a full it kind of took me a little while to kind of grasp it, because I did want her to go back to her family because I thought she had a real connection with her sister, and I thought based on her experience she might be able to kind of build a better life with her family. But the more I think about it, I actually I'm glad that she left, and I think it kind of gave me the impression that she could go anywhere at that point and be anyone.
Maybe she left now the right way instead of the wrong way, like she did before.
Also, I think a lot of the movie is her not willing to accept a role that is put upon her. I think at first it's kind of her just being this shy girl, and then so she rejects that role, and then she's in this gang with these girls, and she doesn't want to. She sees the girl of the group that she replaced that had got pregnant and had a baby, and she saw where that was kind of leading, and so she kind of rejects that role. She also goes to work with her mom, and then she could very easily live that life, any of these lives she could live, and but she's just rejecting all the roles. And even like when her boyfriend proposes to her and asks her to marry him, and she rejects that. And then like she could have been one of her boss's girls, you know, like she could have chosen that is an okay role for her to be in. And she always rejected any role that was put on her because that's not who she was. That's not who she wanted to be. And then like at the end, it was, she could have gone back to her family and accepted that to be her role. Like, so, I don't know what that would have
to now be the confident, more responsible, knowing about the world.
I don't even know about
mentor.
that. Just kind of going back to, I saw it more as going back to what she was before. You know, she didn't really, at that point, she didn't have any other options. So she was going back home because she needed a place to live. Like she didn't have anywhere else to go.
Yeah, I guess she'd
so
be
she was kind
almost.
of was going home, almost in a way accepting that role for herself and saying that's okay for me to live that role, but then ultimately rejecting that, even though there was never throughout the entire movie, there was no other good or better option than what was, than those situations that she was in. Like, but yet she always rejected the roles that were put upon her. That's my kind of take.
She wanted to make her own life,
and
didn't want to take anyone else's what they expected of her. I think that's why at the end she did what she did, because she had to do something totally for herself.
Weird.
Anything else, guys? I mean, Brandon, it was a great pick. Good movie choices, total quality, and I'm glad you chose it.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite Brandon pick so far.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'd still go with Mustang. Actually, like of everything that Brandon, all these foreign films, I think, like even back to The Great Beauty and Leviathan, I'd probably go with Mustang. I really liked Mustang.
Okay, cool.
Good pick, Brandon.
Well, good pick, Brandon. That was Girlhood. So yeah, we'll go to mine real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. So my pick was a film called La Samauri, and it's a French film. Real quick, I'm gonna pull up the summary on Letterboxd. In a career-defining performance, Alien Delton plays Jeff Costello, a contract killer with samurai instincts. After carrying out a flawless planned hit, Jeff finds himself caught between a persistent police investigator and a ruthless employer, and not even his armor, fedora, and trench coat can protect him. I mean, that's kind of a weird summary. I wonder what the IMDb one says. That sounds like it was like pulled from Wikipedia or something. But I mean, I love this movie. I saw it a few years back, and you guys know, like, I'm really into film noir. I love that genre, and I also love like how noir has progressed since its heyday. And this movie came out in the 60s, and it's French, so this was like a French neo-noir, and it's in color. It's not on black and white, but it still has a lot of noir tendencies. His whole outfit and apartment are kind of akin to this other movie that came out in the 40s called This Gun for Hire. The whole trench coat and fedora thing is totally a noir thing, and I feel like a lot of characters are wearing trench coats and stuff, which is kind of out of place for like French type stuff. Like, this movie kind of feels like it's not necessarily even really in this world. But for me, at least, it was the first time I saw this movie. Within minutes, I knew that I loved it. Like, just everything about it was just kind of screaming, like, this is what I want from a movie. It's just so cool. Like, everything about how he looks, how the vibe is, the sets are really creative. They go to that bar, and the bar is like really interesting.
I want to hang at that bar.
yeah. And like the camera work is really fascinating. And it all seems like effortless in this movie. I love how the main character, how he's set up, how he seems like such an expert. Like the way he steals a car in the opening scene, and he does it so casually and has such a cool about it, and it's sort of arrogance, but it feels like it's like deserved, like he is an expert at what he's doing. And then like the plot of the movie happens, like he gets seen when he's doing a hit, and the police kind of have a whole side of this movie. I feel like the police are kind of what keep a lot of the plot going in the movie, where they're trying to get him and trying to pin him. Yeah, I mean, this is just a movie that I always thought was just immediately, yes, this is what I want from a movie, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So I have a couple other things I want to bring up, but first I want to get your guys' takes. So what do you think?
Mm-hmm. Nick, this film is incredible. It's perfect. So perfect. And I remember I kind of said this after finding out Moonlight only cost $2 million to make. But this movie made in like France in the 60s, it's like, how are people still making bad films like 50 years later? When this film is like so clean and crisp and simple and flawless.
Just got to make a simple movie well.
Tell it well. Simple story. Tell it well.
And they did it. So you said the word effortless, Nick. Like this movie is effortlessly doing that back then in the 60s with what they knew then. And yeah, it is so fun and tight to watch. The police investigation is just kind of like it's just part process, and you're just watching it happen, but it's like intense and entertaining while it's going through. And the lead is just so slick and cool. The score, which I kind of related to Girlhood, it's just this one synth. I didn't even know they had like synth sounds in the mid 60s. Like, when was the first electronic instrument even made? I don't know. This had to have been like one of the earliest synth usages in film. I would be interested to look that up, but like that sound like was just kept coming back and was so beautiful and worked so well with the movie.
I have the Criterion Collection Blu-ray for this one too, and after I got done watching it, like I left the credits on that, like I walked to the other side of the room and started doing something else, and then went back to the main menu, and just that song, like, or one of the songs of the movie, just was basically playing in the menu, and I just left it on for like half hour, 40 minutes. I just enjoyed hearing it, you know.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah. I also loved the like, we'll come back. Let's come back to the ending, because that's like all the questions.
I wanted to say, like, you were talking about the process. Like, I loved that scene where they rounded up all like the usual suspects and like basically like narrowed it down to who it possibly could have been. And then they had that scene where they switched everyone's coats and hats. And then it's
on the fly too. You know, he's like smart and just thinking this through. Like, this isn't typical of them.
Yeah, totally. And then they have the guy who was basically like paying for the apartment for the guy that the main character is sleeping with. And he's like set up. And I think that guy thinks that he is maybe identifying him, like, to have him get caught. You know, I think he knows that this girl's sleeping with this guy, and I think he wants to get him caught. You know, he makes this comment that he's not very observant, but then he like points out, like, I recognize that hat, that coat, and that guy's face.
It's so specific.
Imagine if you were observant.
That's funny.
Yeah. So there was one thing I wanted to read to you guys, if you didn't mind. Like with Criterion, they come with like booklets, so there's like essays that are inside of it, and this one has an essay that's called "Death in White Gloves" by David Thompson, and just this one section where it says, "What is a samurai?" I just think it's kind of an interesting idea that we should think about, because the movie is called Le Samurai, and usually that's like Japanese culture, and this is very noir, and it's about hitman. So why is it called Le Samurai? What is a samurai? When he wears a fedora as crisp as glass and a pale trench coat that could have been sculpted by a Ranscuti, I don't know what that is, he is doomed. He is an icon out of his time. He is a hired killer, yet he is the last emblem of honor in a shabby world of compromise. He is a man who believes in tiny adjustments to the perfect shadow cast by the brim of his hat, who exults in the flatness with which he can utter a line, and who aspires to the last lovely funeral of brushes on a drummer's cymbal. His essence is in timing, gesture, and glance. And he is as close to the eternal spirit of the poet. I just thought that was like super beautiful, and it kind of like paints, how he's like a samurai.
Nice.
So,
Sean.
Yeah. So, this movie actually really reminded me of Heat in a lot of ways. Like, I actually just recently watched Heat for the first time, and it's like the cat and mouse aspect of the movie. Following both the bad guy, or in this case the protagonist, and as well as the cops chasing him, and the detective chasing after him. And both of them kind of not being great people, both of them being pretty shitty people. And yet you're definitely kind of rooting for this contract killer, this guy who just kills without asking questions. I thought that was a really interesting connection. I wonder how much it was influenced by this movie.
I feel like Heat's also kind of a noir in some ways.
Yeah.
Like crime, crime movies kind of turn into, especially in like the 80s and 90s, kind of turn into, they pull a lot from classic noir in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And that whole aspect, I think, as you mentioned, is pretty interesting because the cops in this movie do a fair amount of shady things.
Yeah.
Like putting the microphone in his room. It's like, that is against the law. Uh-huh. But they're trying to get him. So, and
harassing the woman who claimed that he was at her apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
I like that comparison a lot, Sean. I'm like, this movie's really cool. It's just cool in general. It's a really awesome pick. But my number one movie of the last decade was Drive. And it's like one of my, it's one of those like mind-blowing experiences for me, film-wise, that's just like dug so deep into my love for film, and like all the things I love about it are like really expressed in that movie. And so it's really cool to see all these different things that are very obvious inspirations for that movie and that kind of genre that it exists in, which, a lot of people consider that movie as noir or a neo-noir, and this movie very much is as well. And that's just an interesting comparison. And then you brought up Heat. I've just been reading a bunch about how Michael Mann, like there's also like a subgenre of, there's like noir, there's neo-noir, and then there's an even smaller subgenre that's that people call like a neon noir. And they say that Michael Mann was like the kind of the pioneer of that.
Shit, dude.
Line
Manhunter. Totally.
Manhunter.
Manhunter is a neon noir. I get it. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so that's just kind of funny that you brought that up. It's like a direct link. And that's just, I don't know. It's cool. It's so awesome to see, like, and I'm sure it even goes back further than this movie, but it's just fun to see, like, kind of like I can see the direct line from this movie to Drive. Like I can see it. There's so much there. There's so much, like the main character, the plot, the how everything evolves. there's
Ryan
just so
Gosling
much.
definitely has a similar vibe as
Oh,
the main
shit.
character in this movie.
Yeah.
He's just like a nameless like character that's
And,
like,
just
I mean,
a
he has a
slick
name in
look.
this, but yeah.
Distinct but slick look.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think happened at the end? Why didn't he kill her? What was going on there?
Well, he obviously was never intending. I think he was never intending to kill her. He knew that she was being watched, and I don't know why he chose it, but I'm pretty sure he went in there to commit suicide, like to be killed by the people watching her. Maybe he was giving up. Maybe he thought that there was no way he would be able to get out of it with all the people that were after him. And
do you think something was going to happen to her? And he thought that was like the best way to
she
clear
was
her
in on
name?
it, which is why she wanted her boss killed, right? Which is why she was protecting him.
Oh, I thought she was
Yeah.
What are you
hired by
talking about?
the gangsters to cover up. Oh, maybe you're right. Actually, so wasn't she? Didn't so he went? No. Okay, so he went to her because he wanted to get in touch with the people who hired him, right? So he figured that because she covered up for him, she didn't identify him, that she must be in contact with the people who hired him, and because they hired her to help cover up the killing.
Well, Nick, you've seen it a few times.
Yeah.
This is my second time.
What's going on here?
I mean, I think you're kind of getting close to it, Sean. I'm not totally sure myself a little bit, but I think the other girl was tied into there a little bit too. I mean, I think he did care about her as well, and the police were after her, and I think he kind of wanted to help let her off the hook too. But I don't know. I appreciate the ambiguous ending, and because like
second viewing, finding more information.
The first time I saw it, I was pretty just sure that he was kind of like trying to intimidate her, maybe, and try to get her. But yeah, no, that's not what happened. So,
but again, yeah, I appreciate the complex and ambiguous ending that demands a rewatch.
I mean, I would love to talk about this movie on and on and on, but I think that we should wrap this up just because we've been doing this for almost hour and 15, hour 20, hour 30. So, but man, this has been fun. You know, I really love talking about these movies with you guys. You know, as I said at the top of the show, I don't know any movies that are coming out in July. I'm sure there's going to be a few indies, and I'm still catching up on a few indies that are already out, but you know, nothing big to the point where I think we need to cover them. Like even like The Five Bloods, like I knew was coming out like last month, and it was like, hey, let's pay attention to this. Like I don't. Do you guys know of anything that's coming out in July that you're looking forward to specifically?
No.
That one movie, the Andy Samberg movie is coming out.
Oh yeah, that movie. I'm really excited about that movie. That looks great. That looks so
Andy
much.
Samberg.
It's going to be on
Palm
Hulu.
Springs. Palm Springs.
Yeah. It's like Groundhog's Day, but with partying in Palm Springs.
I want to say the Train to Busan sequel comes out this month too.
No way. That's coming out?
Yeah.
Like, and we can watch it?
I assume so. I don't know if it's like where it's going, but it's scheduled to come out in July.
Anyway, so we're going to do the same thing next month where we all picked a movie and we're going to force each other to watch it. So let's real quick talk about the movies that we're going to force each other to watch. So, Sean, what's your pick?
I am going to pick. I kind of went back and forth. I think this time the other movie that I might pick for next time is a movie that Nick has seen, but I kind of want to give Nick a movie that he hasn't seen yet. So I'm gonna go with Yojimbo.
All right.
Do another Kurosawa.
Yes.
Which kind of ties into my Western stuff too, because this is the movie that, in a lot of ways, birthed the spaghetti Western. Fistful of Dollars is a direct ripoff of this movie.
Oh, cool.
So yeah,
cool.
I'm so excited about this one. Oh yeah, this is on my list. Like for the year, like I have a list going of movies that I'm trying to. It's like it's called 30 by 4, and it's like I've chosen 30 movies by for 4 decades, and yeah, this movie is on there, and I've been like eyeing it, like I can't wait to watch it. So awesome pick, Sean. So excited. Yojimbo, right? That's what it's called.
Yojimbo.
Brandon, what's your pick?
So this is a little different for me. I think you guys will like this. I went a little older for the first time. Found a movie nobody's seen. So this is a film called 1966 film called Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? And it's a very famous play, like one of the most acclaimed plays of all time. And I've seen it on Broadway once. Film starring Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton, has a 4.1 on Letterboxd. It's so good, and I'm so excited for you guys to watch it. But when you go into it, you guys gotta know it's a play. It's a play. So you get that rhythm that comes along with the play.
Brandon, you tried to
like the movie's a play.
No.
The script is from a play. It's like was done on stage before this, and it's that script. So go in knowing, it's dialogue.
Yeah.
So Brandon, have you seen this movie, or have you just seen the play?
No, I saw it. After I saw the play, I saw the movie.
Brandon,
because the movie, it's one of the most acclaimed adaptations of a Broadway thing ever.
You tried to get me to watch this movie a long time ago, and I think I watched maybe the first 5 minutes. And then he's like, "This is terrible." No, that's not what I did.
Yeah, it's Brandon. This is actually on that same list I just mentioned. I made on my 30 by 4 list. So
shit!
I've definitely been meaning to watch this one too. And
awesome.
Shannon watched this earlier this year actually, and it's very intense. I didn't watch it with her, but I kind of was like peeking over her. It was like so on brand still, but cool. I'm also older, so and American and not foreign, so. I'm very excited for this one too. Great pick, Brandon. I mean,
Nick, you can do the French dub and put the English subtitles on it if you want.
Okay.
To make it more of a random film.
I don't know if it used to be on Netflix. I don't know if it still is, but it was on Netflix earlier this year. Cool. Derek, what's your pick?
All right. So I get really excited when Sean mentioned Heat, because this is from what I've been reading about like neon noir and stuff. This is what people consider like the birthplace of it, which is Michael Mann's very first film, Thief. And I saw none of us have seen it. So
what?
Yeah,
this is
not even
so
you?
cool. I'm so excited for this. Like,
this has been like a movie I've been wanting to see forever.
Nice.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That's so cool, Derek. I'm so excited. There's like, oh, wow. Michael Mann's such a famous director, and I know you're a big fan of his, but like Thief, and there's a few others that like, I don't know, I'm missing a few key Michael Mann movies in my filmography. And
some of them are kind of hard
noir.
to find, and this is one of them. So, yeah.
Nice. I'm very lacking in my Michael Mann as well.
Amazon Prime Video free watch. There we go. Easy.
All right.
For Thief?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, nice. Just like last week, it wasn't. It wasn't
Derek
free.
is killing it with his pick.
That must be really.
Gosh, I'm so excited for all these movies. Great picks,
Yeah,
guys.
this is a really
Great
good
picks.
month.
What do you got for us, Nick?
Oh, yeah.
Oh boy, you guys are in for it.
Oh no.
definitely weirdest. It's gonna be a weird ride for you guys. So I picked a 1968 Burt Lancaster film called The Swimmer.
No, Nick.
Yeah, dude. The Swimmer is notorious for how outrageous the trailer is. It's one of the weirdest trailers of all time. The trailer is hilarious, and the movie is also hilarious. The movie is like an absurdist, like late 60s absurdist movie that has a lot going on in it, but
it has 100% on Rotten Tomato.
I mean,
it's a perfect film.
When I watched it because the trailer was so funny, and I actually thought it was a fantastic movie. So I was shocked at how great of a movie it actually was, in my opinion. So, I mean, I hope you guys like it. It's super weird. You three picked classics, and I picked like a bizarro absurdist film. So
I feel like you shared like a while back, like years ago, you were just like, you guys have to watch this trailer, and I've just seen the trailer for it.
Yeah, I remember that on the text thread. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah,
cool guys.
Yeah.
So those are our 4 picks.
Some good stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody. And if you want to play along for next month, we're gonna watch Yojimbo, Thief, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and The Swimmer. So I'm excited. Thanks for doing this, guys. It was super fun talking movies with you, and I hope you have a good month of movie watching.
Yeah.
Bye.
Ciao.
See ya.
Sweet. Bye.